Hey everybody, we are teaching Tilt Brush, and this episode is a follow-up to the water effects. This is water effects 2. Except that's backwards for you. Water effects 2. Basically, we're going to be picking up where the other class left off and going a little more into the larger ocean textured surfaces. We did a lot of detail for the small items, and we did a lot of detail for some of the flowing, but we only briefly touched on an ocean surface or a lake surface that's disturbed by wind with waves. So we're going to do a little bit more of that today here. So I'm going to do what I did last time, and I'm going to start off with just one of our basic markers. This is the marker that does have flat color. You could also do this with a flat pen, which gives us a little bit of space, a little bit of shadow. That way we get a little bit more motion. So I'm going to start with a flat, and I'm going to use my simple wrist action so that I can make my waves more or less the same size, just going back and forth with that curve. So you can see I've got that shallow peak and trough. And I can actually just go back and keep doing more of these things, building up this sort of pattern, building up this texture. For now, I'm not worried about making it flat or anything, because now I can use my selection tool to grab this whole thing. Now I can move it around, give it at angles, and give you a little better demonstration of what we're talking about here. So you can see, since I was just using the natural size of my wrist, all of the waves are more or less the same size. But we've got that curve and that peak. I can even rotate this so you can see it edge on, how there's that little bit of a curve to it. Now that I've got it as a piece, I can actually duplicate it. And now I can start making a larger texture, a larger area, hopefully getting those waves to line up. Now we can see that whole ocean terrain effect starting to take shape here. There's enough difference between the waves so it doesn't look like it's just the whole thing going all at once. Let me hit that there. But now you can see I've got a whole lovely surface area with that rippled effect. For those of you with a PC, we can choose the select all to grab this whole piece at once. And we could even duplicate it again and make an even more massive giant oceanscape here. Now when I deselect, you can see my whole room here is filled with an ocean. I'm going to do a select all. Oops, work with me here. Select all so that I can angle this a little more flat, so we can deal with it like an ocean. And I'm also going to make it a little bigger. There we go. So these ocean textures, you could make these waves bigger or smaller depending on how you swing your wrist. More of a peak brings them higher, makes it sort of a rougher ocean feel. With this, there's plenty of gaps and things, so I'm actually going to cheat a little bit. I'm going to use the same color blue, but I'm just going to add a big piece of blue underneath, just to fill in the colors, to fill in the gaps. There. Now, all I did is I added this big blue block underneath it, just to fill in those gaps behind it, just so it's not as obvious that it's a bunch of separate stripes. There we go. Deselect. So now I want to work with this surface, this rough terrain, to really make it feel a little more natural, not just flat pieces. I could do things, for example, I'm going to grab a splatter brush, one of my nice organic splatters, and I'm going to choose a very pale blue, a foam color. Let's zoom in a little here. So now if I start doing traces, splatters along the ridges of these waves, I don't want to be too consistent. I can be a little bit of different directions, a little bit different sizes as well, to start implying the crests. Maybe I can even do it in little strips. So as you've got certain waves moving, we've got those waves in a repeating pattern. I may go for a very small and start bringing in more of these types of lines, sprays and splashes, to again give a little bit more of direction to the water. So the waves seem to have a progression direction. If all of these little lines are coming off in this direction, the waves are cresting and we've got the foam falling back all along the waves in this direction. Likewise, spray could be done using the smoke tool. Sort of like what I did with the river. If I just have a little bit of spray and smoke right where these waves are cresting, it gives that little bit of motion, little bit of direction to these ocean waves. Now we can start to see the repeating pattern, but there's enough breaking it up. There's enough variation in it so it doesn't feel like it's all just one repeated thing over and over. Get a little more spray down here, a little more spray up here. The more time you put into it, the more detail it'll have, the more variation it'll have. Now that I've got this lovely ocean happening here, I can go ahead and start adding things in it, like maybe I'll grab a nice brown so I could do the hull of a boat. A little narrower here. The bow coming up, stern coming up, maybe a little stern coming on like that. Masts. But now we've got a boat in an ocean. I'm even going to move it around a little bit. We've got a boat in an ocean. You can see depending on where we place it within the waves, bigger or smaller, little tiny boat amongst the ocean waves. Just more ways of having it give a texture, more way of having it imply the motion. We are working in 3D here, so we can look at this from any angle, see which way the waves are moving, see which way the waves are coming. So just bring a little more life into this surface. I'm going to vary it even more. I'm going to grab my coarse bristles, another good tool for organic textures, and I'm going to choose a slightly darker blue. That's a little too purpley. So I'm actually going to use my color chip next to the pink so I can start to see where a good combination color is going to be. Now I can again start adding texture, adding motion to the waves. If I can keep that same curve of my wrist, then those waves should still follow the same types of patterns. If you do want to have an object in the water, make sure you give plenty of shape around that object to really tie it into the water itself. So now I've got it making its own wake here. Maybe I'll use my dropper tool to pick up those same brushes. Now I'll add a little wake of its own coming across. And now we can see there's distance traveled by the boat through the rough ocean. Make it small, we've got a boat on a big ocean. Or we can zoom in and make the boat in the wave what we're talking about here. So now I'll adjust the boat a little bit. So now it's crashing up over the wave type of thing. I can even take some of its wave action and that type of thing and adjust the foam, adjust the spray to try to get it to look like the boat is crashing through the waves. Don't need that part. So now if I make the boat a little bigger, we can try to have it make it look like the boat is sailing through the ocean. So experiment with a lot of these different tools. The splatter tool and the coarse brush tool give us a lot of that slightly random, slightly natural look. The smoke tool gives us that little bit of spray, a little bit of motion. Experiment with different brush sizes, experiment with variations in color, but we can get some lovely ocean surface effects just by using some of the standard tools. So rather than using the flat marker, if you use a tool like the paper brush, this tool, I'm going to grab the same blue color, move that off to the side, but now it's got a little more depth, a little more texture, a little more surface here. If I bring that close to the camera, you can see how the paper itself has a slight surface, a slight rippled surface to it. So if I do a lot of these waves, let's give myself a much bigger brush and do some of these bigger waves. Again, if you curve it more, we have bigger wave action. But now again, we've got a slight surface, a slight texture to it. Other tools that work for this type of thing depends on what type of surface you want. Things like the duct tape give it a very sort of glossy surface, but it's got that sort of fabric pattern inside of it. So whether you want your water to have that slight gloss or that slight texture to it, we have a bunch of different tools to try it with. I'm going to go back to our original water here, just so we've got this as our closing image. So we've got water with a lot of different ways to bring it out. Last episode we were looking at water specifically as held water and flowing water, and a little bit about the texture. This episode goes a lot more into bringing out the details in that texture, so even adding things like color. So let's select all so we can tilt it up and you can see it again. So now when I rotate this up, looking at it from the top, you can see how it's a repeated texture. Zoom out even more. So these waves, ocean waves, have that complete line going, and a little bit more implies the weight of the boat. In fact, I'm even going to turn off the selection so I can add a little bit more weight. Get smaller, please. A little bit more weight coming off the boat in that direction. There we go. A little more froth around the bows. So now we've got a boat sailing through the ocean. Let's turn that back slightly sideways. And there we go. We don't want them all perfectly uniform, so we've got that natural variation of the ocean. But now you can see we've got some lovely textures, so we can really start building this up. I did all this in just a couple of minutes. Think of the detail and the size you could make if you spend several hours really building up the natural look of the ocean. It's a lot of fun, and you can really get carried away. I've got too much of an ocean here, so I can get this guy out of the way. See if I can grab it. There we go. This was getting in the way. Okay. So our ocean textures, build them up with many different tools over time, adding details, expanding your scale until you really start getting that effect you're looking for. But Tilt Brush can have a lot of fun with water. So do try out different things, try different styles, try different tools just to see what really works best for you to really bring out that oceanscape that you're looking for. I'm going to leave that there. I'm going to put up our usual message. If you do enjoy this stuff, do let us know. Both subscribing to our channel and let us know in the comments about what sort of lessons you'd like to learn about. We do more of these than we care to imagine, and we don't plan on stopping. So feel free to let us know, subscribe, share with your friends, and we'll get some more of this tilting stuff happen. So happy tilting, enjoy, and we'll see you next time for Teaching Tilt Brush. Have fun, everybody.